Hello, everybody. I'm your mysterious friend Misty, and without wasting any time, let's get into our story. The wedding has ended, the guests had gone, and the grand mansion had returned to its usual silence. I stood near the center of the room, still trying to understand how I had gone from an engineering student to a mafia wife just within a matter of days. My husband, who had not smiled even once since I ever saw him, loosened his tie and looked at me like he was giving an instruction in a meeting. Mr. Kim, your room is upstairs. I blinked. Yan, our room. So we are married and still living like a hostel roommates? That made him pause. Slowly, he turned his head and gave her a long look. Mr. Kim, do you always speak before thinking? She stared back and said, do you always answer like a freezer? A flicker passed across his face, and I was cursing myself to call him a freezer. As everyone said, he is a short-tempered human. Mr. Kim, you should not say things you can't defend. I straightened immediately. Yawn. I can defend that. Mr. Kim. Really? Yawn. Yes. He raised one eyebrow. Mr. Kim. Then prove that I am a freezer. I froze at that, as I was wondering how is it possible that he is talking so much, because he always used to talk as if his words are very precious, so he has to preserve them. Yawn, you are impossible. He tilted his head. Mr. Kim. Noted. Then, as if nothing had happened, he walked away. She stood there, offended for full 3 seconds, and then muttered to an empty room. He is definitely a freezer. But also wondering, because he never talked much. His sentences would have been short, clear, and of course, cold. The next morning, I woke up expecting the usual discomfort of a new home, a new marriage, and an unfamiliar roof over my head. What I did not expect was to find the bed beside me untouched and the room completely empty. Then I remembered his separate room concept, and I saw a folded note on the table which was beside my bed. She picked it up. It stated, going to office early. Ask the maid if you need anything. She stared at it, then stared harder, then sat on the bed like not personally insulted her. So this is it. I wonder how long I'll be able to survive with this man, she whispered to herself. The maid entered with tea at that exact moment and politely pretended not to hear. Maid, sir told me to make you sure have breakfast. My eyes narrowed. Did he also tell you to tell me he left before sunrise like a villain in a period drama? The maid chuckled slightly. Maid, you are still like a joyful kid, ma'am. But in this house, the environment is always cold. Sir never speak much, and he is very busy, and this is his daily routine. And even I am not allowed to talk with you like this. The past whole day while resting in my room as I was very tired. By evening, I passed the whole day while resting in my room as I was very tired. By evening, I had decided not to be a dramatic wife waiting at the table like in the movies. After all, he don't even consider me as his wife. We both were forced into this marriage by our families in order to convert the business partnership into a family relation. I sat at the dining table and decided to wait for him. Maybe this would ease out the awkwardness of our so called husband wife relation. The doorbell rang and he finally arrived at 11:30 pm. He looked tired, stern, and unfairly handsome in a way that only made me more annoyed. He noticed me, almost half asleep, keeping the plate in front of me. Mr. Kim, you waited. Yawn. No. He looked at the empty chair across from her, then at the table, then back at her. Mr. Kim, did the chairs eat the food? I pressed my lips together to stop myself from laughing. And I was also happy that he is not being much cold with me. Yawn. I was practicing patience, Mr. Kim. That is a poor way to do it. Yawn. You are making me sound like a child, Mr. Kim. You are acting like one. Yawn. Excuse me? He sat down and removed his watch with complete calm. Mr. Kim, you waited at the table as if dinner would disappear if you looked away. Yawn. It was not that, Mr. Kim. What was it then? I was thinking, how can this man have answers for even utterly nonsense blabbering? Then I realized he was looking at me steadily, forcing me to answer. I muttered, I just thought it would be weird to eat alone. There was a brief silence. Mr. Kim, you are more awkward than you are admitting, he said in his infuriating, calm voice, yet annoying me by his words. Yawn. You are not allowed to judge my awkwardness when you are the reason half of the house is afraid to even breathe loudly. For a second, I thought this cold-faced human might actually smile, but instead he said, Mr. Kim, noted. Yawn. You keep saying noted like you are collecting evidence against me. Mr. Kim, maybe I am. A few days later, she decided she has to visit his office. It was meant to be a simple gesture, a small piece of offering. As the last night conversation at the dinner table felt like we can at least live like friends. I arrived at the office wearing my most respectable outfit and my most serious expression, which lasted exactly 2 minutes before I realized everyone in the building looked 10 times more serious than Mr. Kim. No doubt they are Mr. Kim's employees, completely influenced by him. The receptionist, sorry, the receptionist glanced at me. The assistant greeted me politely, while the guards stood there like statues. I felt like I have walked into a courtroom instead of an office. Hyun, I am here to see Mr. Kim. Receptionist. Sir is in the meeting, ma'am. Hyun, I can wait. Receptionist. What is wrong with my fluency? Damn, guys, please forgive me. Receptionist. You may prefer the lounge, ma'am. Yawn. I can wait here. Receptionist. Okay, ma'am. 2 hours later, she was no longer sure if she should wait. 3 hours later, she had mentally filed a complaint against the entire building. By evening, she was sitting stiffly in the waiting area, trying to look graceful while internally planning revenge against anyone who had ever described waiting as noble. When he finally came out and saw her still there, his brows moved very slightly, noticing Yan. Mr. Kim, you waited all day. I stood up quickly. Yan, I did not wait all day. He gave me a weird look, and I looked away, not knowing what to say. Yan, fine, I waited a lot. His expression remained serious, but he felt there was a strange softness underneath it now. But he shrugged it off. Mr. Kim, why? Yawn. I thought maybe it might help if I came. I internally cursed myself, as even I don't know how it would help him if I visited there. He was silent for a moment. Mr. Kim, next time let my assistant know. Yawn. That is your reaction? Mr. Kim, what did you expect? Yawn. I don't know. At least a tiny bit of appreciation. Here I go. Again, my brain failing to process, like, why would he even appreciate me when I just went without even telling him? He looked at me for a long second and said, Mr. Kim, you came here without telling anyone, sat in the lobby full of people who looked like they were trained by villains, and expected a reward? Yawn. You are very rude, Mr. Kim, and you are very stubborn. Yawn. I came here to make things easier. His gaze softened a bit, just a little bit. Mr. Kim, then next time, do not make yourself miserable in this process. That line stayed with me much longer than I expected. The next morning, I don't know why I am still upset by just one of his statements, as I already knew he is cold. So I somewhere expected these kind of things. Well, to get rid of these thoughts, I decided to go to college and left for college early. Author point of view. Yes, guys, she is still a final year engineering student. I forgot it to mention earlier. Sorry for that. While on the other hand, Mr. Kim was trying to focus on files holding in his hand, but his brain was thinking about Yan. From the time he woke up and he didn't even saw her at the house while leaving. So he decided to call the maid and ask about Yeon. Mr. Kim, where is Yeon? Maid, Madam had went to college, sir. Mr. Kim, alone? Maid, yes, sir. He was quiet for a moment and then called one of his personal assistant named John. Mr. Kim, send security with her from tomorrow and remember that she still don't know anything about me being in mafia world. John, okay, sir. The assistant seemed to want to say something, but wisely he chose his life instead. Later that day, when I returned home and found one of the guard standing near the gate, I frowned. Then another guard, then another. I stopped in a place and went to the kitchen as I thought of asking maid, Yeon, why is the house surrounded? The maid looked nervously toward the stairs. Maid, sir asked for security. Yeon, for what? Is he expecting an invasion? Maid, sir said it is for your safety, ma'am. She said it in a low voice. Yeon, he could have mentioned that before turning the whole place into a fortress. I muttered to myself. That evening, I confronted him directly. I went to his room. It was completely dark, yet the dim lights made everything clearly visible. It completely reflected his personality, which people have been talking about since the day of our marriage was announced. Dark, mysterious, cold, scary. Even though till now I never felt he is scary, as since from the day one, he just kept on arguing with me and also annoying me with his cold responses. But now, at this moment, I was little bit scared, yet gathered the courage and managed to speak normally. Yeon, why are there guards following me? Mr. Kim, because you are not safe alone. Yeon, I have survived engineering exams, lab submissions, and group projects. I think I can survive college. He folded his hands. Mr. Kim, that is exactly why you need protection. Yeon, how is that related? Mr. Kim, because you are used to surviving chaos. Yeon, that was almost a compliment. Mr. Kim, it was not. Yeon, you are terrible at being polite. Mr. Kim, and you are terrible at being protected without arguing. That made me stop. Then, very quietly, I said, I only argue because you never explain anything first. He looked at me for a moment. Mr. Kim, noted. Yeon, I hate that word, I said while groaning. He gave me a faintest look of amusement. Mr. Kim, I know. I returned back to my room, and then my friend Elsa called me to inform The external exam dates were announced in the college group, and there are just 5 days for the first paper. I opened the college group and stared at the notice with horror. Yawn. 5 days? Elsa. That is criminal. I was already spiraling and didn't heard anything which Elsa said. As I have missed the entire semester because of marriage arrangements, the emotional shock, and the complete disruption of my life. Now the exam was upon, like a threat in a printed form. That night I studied with the energy of someone trying to outrun my fate. By midnight, I was still working with preparing notes, and by 1 a.m. in the morning, I was speaking to my notes as if they had feelings. Author point of view. She was already traumatized by the exam announcement, and by 2 a.m., her period pain had arrived like an enemy with perfect timing. She sighed dramatically and pressed her hand to her stomach. Yeah, this is betrayal, a pure betrayal, I told the empty room. The maid heard her from outside. Maid, ma'am, do you need any help? Yawn. No, I am fine, I said, sitting upright with stubborn dignity. But the maid noticed that I was not fine. Author point of view. By 3, fever joined the pain. By 4 a.m., she was glaring at her textbooks as though they had done this already to her personally. When Mr. Kim came home later, she was still awake, still studying, and looking far more heroic than healthy. He stood in the doorway for a second as he noticed the lights were still on. Mr. Kim, what are you doing? She looked up weakly. Yawn. Studying. Mr. Kim, at this hour? Yawn. I have exam. Mr. Kim, then rather than lying on the bed, you should go to the studying room. Then there you will be able to focus. Author's point of view. He said that and walked out of the room. Yon thought he had a point and went to study room. After few moments, Mr. Kim came to Yon's room just to check whether she slept or not. He didn't find Yan in her room, so he went to study room to check. He found Yan in the study room, on the studying table, leaning on the table weakly, yet somehow trying to study. Mr. Kim, your face looks like it is filing a complaint. Yan flinched by hearing his voice all of the sudden. Yan, I'm not in a mood for your observations. He walked closer and took a look, then said, Mr. Kim, you are feverish. Yan, I am aware. Mr. Kim, you are also lying. She glared at him with all the strength she had left with it. Yan, I am not lying. I am simply enduring. He glanced at scattered books. Mr. Kim, that is the least convincing thing you have ever said. Hyun, I hate you, muttered Bit, but it was loud enough for him to hear. Mr. Kim, no, you don't. She stared at him with a blank expression, unable to process and understand what exactly Mr. Kim said. He took one look at her expression and added, Mr. Kim, not right now, at least. That made her laugh despite herself, though it quickly turned out into a wince because of pain. His face changed immediately, and then all the sarcasm in the room disappeared. Though he thought of asking her what happened, but he chose to leave quietly instead. The next morning, he has been thinking about Hyun all the time, even during the work at office. He called the maid and asked about Hyun, and maid informed him of everything. Period pain, fever, exhaustion, no sleep. He returned home immediately. When he entered the room, she was half under the blanket, her hair slightly messy, face pale, and still trying to hold her dignity like it was an academic subject. Mr. Kim, you should have told me. She squinted at him through feverish exhaustion. Yawn. And here you say I should rest like a child?
He called his personal assistant John.
Yes.
And instructed to cancel all his meetings.
She closed her eyes.
Postponed the attack
John,
which they were supposed to do tomorrow on their arrival.
He came closer to
which
her,
is second most powerful
and touched
mafia.
her forehead to check
Increase
her
the
temperature.
security at the house and
That moment,
shift all his work
John's
to home.
heart was
As he
racing,
has decided
even
to stay
faster
with
than
Jan
the Ferrari in the
at
F1
least
race.
for next 5 days. He spent
Her
the next
cheeks
several days
turned red,
pretending to be indifferent.
and she was completely
Till
flustered,
now, he was just trying
as
to
it was
stay
the
with
first
Jan,
time he
but
ever touched
without
her.
even realizing, he started
She
to
was
love
feeling
Jan.
butterflies in her stomach.
All these days, he
at
kept
that
checking her
moment,
temperature
but
every few hours,
pretended
checked
to be
if she took her
normal,
medicines
and
or
said,
not. At the night, when
Jan,
she slept, he entered
why
her
are
room
your hands
quietly.
so cold?
Each time,
Mr. Kim,
he sat beside her bed,
you are the one
put a wet cloth
burning
on
with
her
fever.
forehead to reduce the fever,
Yawn.
and watched
Very
her
rude
with
of my body,
softness.
she muttered.
He would never allow
He
anyone to
paused,
see. All the
then
5
said,
days have passed, and
Mr. Kim,
he had been caring for her
indeed.
as if kid is
She
injured
opened
while
one
playing.
eye to look at him.
The night before her first exam,
Yawn.
he came to her
Are
room
you
carrying
mocking
some
me?
books, handwritten
Mr.
notes,
Kim,
and a laptop.
no.
She looked at
Yawn.
the stack and then
Your
at him.
face says yes.
Yawn. You
Mr.
are
Kim,
helping me?
my face says
Kim,
nothing.
no, I am preventing
Yawn.
disaster.
Your face is very
She
dishonest.
huffed and said, that
For the
sound
first time
less
that day,
kind.
he almost
Mr. Kim,
smiled, but
this is more
unnoticed
accurate.
by Yawn.
Yawn. You are really
He went
impossible.
out of the room without saying anything.
And at this moment, Mr. Kim says, and yet, he places the laptop. You keep talking to me. She stared at him for a moment, then muttered, unfortunately, and said, from where did you get these handwritten notes? Mr. Kim, I prepared them last night. John, you prepared notes by studying all these in one night? Mr. Kim, I completed my graduation in cybersecurity department as a Red Hat hacker. She was completely amused and staring at him with her jaw dropped. Mr. Kim, come and sit here. She obeyed him and sat beside him on the couch. He began explaining the topics with unusual patience. He was precise, intelligent, and infuriatingly good at making difficult things sound simple. At some point, he realized she was not able to see the laptop screen properly. As she shifted her position again and again, and it confirmed him. Mr. Kim, something is wrong? Yawn. I cannot see the screen and the notes in your hand properly. He frowned slightly, then looked at her posture, the screen angle, and finally her stubborn expression. Without another word, he stood and lifted her Without another word, he stood and lifted her effortlessly as if she is weightless. Yon gasped and was surprised, delighted, and also safe. His warm hands at her back and the scent of his shirt made her relax, cheeks flushed, the simple motion turning into a memorable moment, initializing the spark of love. He tried to hide the quick swell in his chest and the private joy of finally holding her this way. His fingers tightened almost imperceptibly, then loosens as he masks his thrill with easy normalcy. In that quiet exchange, both of them seen, she with outward wonder and he with guarded devotion. Mr. Kim says, "Why did your face turn red, making you look like a tomato?" He said teasingly, and Yan was feeling shy and nervous at the same time. Yet, she somehow managed to say, "Yan, what are you doing?" Mr. Kim, fixing the problem. He set her on his lap as though this was the most normal academic arrangement in the world. Her face turned warm at once. Yan, this is not how people study, she whispered. He adjusted the laptop and said, Mr. Kim, then perhaps people should study better. She stared at him, scandalized. Yan, you are too calm about this. Mr. Kim, you are too dramatic about this. Yan, I am not dramatic. Mr. Kim, you have been blushing for 5 minutes. She went silent, then immediately became angrier and said, that is because you are being unreasonable. Mr. Kim, Yan, what does that mean? Mr. Kim, it means you are distracting yourself instead of listening. She crossed her arms and said, I am listening. Mr. Kim, good. Then tell me the answer to this question. She did, and annoyingly, she got it right. He gave her the faintest nod. Mr. Kim, better. Yawn. Did you just praise me? Mr. Kim, no. Yawn. You did. Mr. Kim, I corrected your answer. Yawn. That is basically praise in your language. He looked down at her with that same unreadable expression. But now there was something warmer in it. Mr. Kim, then you are learning my language quickly. The way he said it made shivers pass down her spine. Later that night, after the revision was done, she lay back on the bed with a sigh. Yawn. I think I'll survive, Mr. Kim. That was never in doubt. He sat beside her and she turned towards him. Yawn. You say that so easily, Mr. Kim, because it is true. She tried to laugh, but another cramp made her wince. He noticed instantly. Mr. Kim, still in pain. Yawn. Very unfair pain, Mr. Kim. Pain is not known for its fairness. Yawn. Why do you sound like you have experience with everything? Mr. Kim. Because I have experience with people who complain loudly. Yawn. I do not complain loudly, she said while looking at him. He raised a brow. She was quiet for 2 seconds, then admitted, maybe only slightly loudly, Mr. Kim. She folded her arms. Yawn. You are enjoying this, Mr. Kim. No. Yawn. You are. He said nothing. She stared at him for a second. Then, with full seriousness, she said, you are smiling on the inside. His gaze met hers. Mr. Kim. Do you want me to deny it? She thought about it, then muttered, no, it would ruin the moment. That finally earned her a real, brief smile. Not large, not dramatic, but enough to make her forget her pain for 1 second. Then he lay beside her and pulled her gently into his arms. She stiffened for half a moment. He noticed and said, if this is uncomfortable, it is not, she said too quickly. He glanced down at her, and she immediately regretted the speed of her answer. His mouth curved just slightly and said, good. Then, in the warmth of the quiet room, his hand rested carefully over her stomach, beneath the blanket. She looked up at him, startled by how his gentle gesture was. Yawn. You are surprisingly useful, she whispered sleepily. Mr. Kim, that is not the word people use for me. Yawn. Then they are clearly wrong. The look he gave her after that was so soft it almost made her shy. Her eyelids began to close, and then she finally pulled her under. It was the look he gave her after that was so soft it almost made her shy. Her eyelids began to close, and when sleep finally pulled her under, it was in the safety of his arms, with his heartbeat steady beside her and the strange, tender comfort of a man who once seemed untouchable. By the morning, she felt a little better. Not fully well, but enough to notice the way he had quietly moved his work nearby. Enough to notice the empty cup on the side table. Enough to notice that he had stayed awake longer than he should have. She looked at him over the edge of the blanket. Yawn. You were here all night? He did not look up from his papers in the hands and said, you were asleep. Yawn. That is not an answer, Mr. Kim. It is enough of one. Yawn. You are hiding things, she said while narrowing her eyes. He finally looked at her. Mr. Kim. Such as? Yawn. How much you actually care. The room went quiet for one long second.
Neither of them moved. Mr. Kim, focus on your exam, he said calmly. She smiled into the blanket because that was as close as he was willing to get to admitting it. And perhaps that was enough for now. Mr. Kim, get ready, else you will be late. By saying this, he left the room. Yeon got ready and was about to leave, but Mr. Kim stopped her and offered to drop her to the college. They reached the college. Yeon stepped out of the car. Mr. Kim said, "All the best." Yeon, "Thank you." Then Mr. Kim returned to his workplace in the house. He was a bit tensed, thinking how she will react after knowing he is the mafia boss, after knowing the reason behind his coldness, his past, and more importantly, the mission on which he'll be going tomorrow, that is to attack the second most powerful mafia. And he wasn't even sure what will be the results and when he'll be returning. That's it for today, guys, and the next part will be continued in part 2, and it's gonna be hella interesting where he confessed to Yeon. So stay tuned.